Hey, good morning everybody, it's Bobby. You know, there are certain fundamentals that I would insist a beginner golfer adhere to that I wouldn't be so insistent upon the better player that they also adhere to them. And that's because once you establish a certain level of skill, then there is some leeway, some latitude to be granted for you to do things your own way. You have a big picture view, and by this point you've developed some preferences. And you're not maligned with all the natural habits that come with being a beginner. Now, for some of you, you've heard me talk about martial arts. I've been in martial arts more than 4 decades now, and during that time I've been a competitor and also an instructor. And one thing, and just to draw an analogy to what I'm saying, that I would insist a beginner do is learn to keep their hands up. This fist has got to be tight somewhere around the chin area. This other hand has got to be tight somewhere around that opposite elbow, and you can block a lot of what's coming at you almost accidentally if you can keep these things here. Now, the white belt, after hearing that and having it driven home time and time again, will look at the brown and black belt and say, well, why is it okay that he keeps his front hand down? Well, because he's doing something. He's got a big picture view. He knows that he's open here, and what he's trying to do by keeping his front hand down is get that other person to strike high, and he's going to block and counter. In other words, he's got a big picture perspective that you don't have in the beginning. The same thing with what I'm going to draw for you today as a parallel, and that is the chip shot. Now, if you've been around me for very long or heard my instruction, you know that in the beginning I insist that a person learns to chip in a wristless way. Now, why is that? Because the thing that has more intuitive appeal than anything else when you start playing golf is the attempt on the part of the golfer to add loft to the shot. Everybody wants to flip at it. And so to learn to swing through in a wristless way is to sort of get that yellow or green belt status, if you can compare it to martial arts for a moment, and that you have developed some sort of command on this golf club. You're no longer flipping at it. Once you get to that point, now you can start to do things your own way. You have control of that club head. You don't flip intuitively. You've lost that habit. So now your own preferences can start to play into it. Now I'm talking to you guys in particular, the ones who like to use your wedge for everything around the green. I'm talking about, 56 or 60 degree wedge, and you use it for bump and runs. You use it for everything around the green. You would never think about hitting a 7 or an 8 iron. That's fine. What I recommend you do then is go to the next level of chipping that should be used by those who've already gotten rid of that deleterious habit to flip and can now be trusted to rely on a little bit of hook spin. In other words, hit a low running chip with a sand wedge that doesn't have a lot of check, that will release, so that you don't have that inconsistent amount of check that comes from a ball that's been hit in a wristless way. This is a great way of chipping, but on long bump and runs, you just aren't really sure how much it's going to grab the green and then drag on you and not get all the way to the hole. This other way, and I'm just going to let my forearms roll over, this kind of chipping motion will definitely release upon landing. That's going to do nothing but roll, and as you can see, that's a pretty decent shot. And so as we go through here, I want you to know if you're a beginner player, then you should learn to chip in a wristless way. But once you establish the ability to do that, and you're no longer maligned with this awful habit of flipping underneath it, well then, being a person who's got control, you can start to do things another way, and that is hit a little hook spin on some of your long chip shots, and you'll find it's a great way to get the ball all the way to the hole. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for tuning in. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.